Hi guys. Well, I thought I would do a final video about this whole Good Game situation. This is going to be a bit of a wrap-up because I don't see the situation changing anytime soon, so I thought I would, instead of going over what's going on in the forums, because it's basically just more of the same sort of stuff going over and over, I thought I would concentrate on just doing a breakdown of what happened on the 2nd of November episode of Good Game, which is the second episode to feature the new host Hex, because I took some notes while I was watching the episode, because I was just stunned that it just went from one level of crap to the next. But we'll break it down. I'll go over what I was talking about. The first problem that I noticed in the episode was within about 10 seconds of the show starting, Barjo got cut off by Hex while he was starting to introduce what segments were going to be on the show today. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen, because it was either Hex being incredibly rude to Barjo or an example of some of the most piss-poor editing I've ever seen on a television production. Because he was started to speak, and about 4 words into his sentence, it suddenly came up on the screen and it was Hex talking instead, as if he just got cut off. That was really piss-poor. Another point from the first episode was that a lot of people complained that the two reviews that were done were very weak and kind of just brief overviews of what was going on in the game. That certainly returned this week, because the 4 reviews they did were all very sort of, I don't know, they weren't even very in-depth. They were basically just basic sort of overviews of the functions of the game and things like that. There wasn't much depth to it. And I did notice that the ratings that they gave at the end of each review were quite inconsistent with what they were saying about the game itself. Several of the games they gave quite negative reviews of. While they did sort of say positive things about each of the games, a lot of them were quite sort of negative in places. And yet all the scores were quite positive. And it was really strange because it was completely incongruent with what they were saying. So I don't know what the hell was going on there. But I also noticed that their scores were also very, very close together. Now, I don't expect that just because there's 2 reviewers they're going to be polar opposites or anything like that. But it does seem really strange that the reviews are so weak and yet somehow the scores were virtually identical despite what they were actually saying in the reviews. People who did watch the show will probably have noticed one thing that was just glaringly obvious, was that they were clearly picking up on the forums complaints about how they've lost the hardcore element to the show, because they kept saying the word hardcore over and over and over again during the episode, as well as the word noob, which is just bizarre. A lot of the times they just kept throwing it into sentences for the hell of it, probably just try and show the fact that they sort of do still seem hardcore and things like that, which just all seemed really fake and put on. But the biggest problem with the episode, absolutely by far, was that god-awful segment, the Ruffle Cup thing. It was mind-melting. I could not understand what the hell they were trying to achieve. Number one, if you're going to have a guest on the show, surely the guest should somehow relate to the show. Video games, or being in the video game industry, or something like that. They got Matthew Riley, who is an acclaimed Australian author, who is about as related to video games as maybe the fat kid from Hey Dad is related to Australian Idol. It was just random. And what made it even worse is that the 2 hosts actually repeatedly said that he wasn't actually in the video game industry, but they kept asking him questions to try and make him relate to it, like things like, oh, would you ever consider writing a video game? And he's there sort of going, well, I don't know, I'd have to think about it, because like I think he probably wouldn't have been allowed to say, well, no bitch, because I actually write novels, like what the hell. But then Hex ended up asking another moronic question, which was something, what was it? I've got it written down here actually. Oh, that's right, yeah. What would you say to viewers who would rather pick up a game controller than a book? How is he supposed to answer that? And why would he answer it anyway? It's got nothing to do with him. He doesn't go out there and try to convince people to read his books. He just writes them, and if people read them, then so be it. What a stupid question. But the whole thing was completely bizarre, because it wasn't an interview as such. It was them standing around playing a golf game on Wii. And even more peculiar was that Barjo was there the entire time, but standing in the background, smiling and grinning like an idiot. For no reason. He had nothing to do with the entire segment. I think he made one sort of off-the-cuff remark towards the end of it, but he wasn't actually involved in the interview. So what the hell was he there for? Well, I think it's pretty much clear that the show is pretty dead in the water at this point, because the reviews are weak. The people who are watching the show are basically unanimous in saying that it's garbage now, and they've already lost a large element of the audience because people are sort of going, why bother? I want to wrap up with one little thing, and that is that yesterday I was reading on the forums a repost of an article on ABC Online, which was actually an interview with Journalist, where he actually stated that while he's very thankful to all the fans and everyone who's been sort of getting involved in this whole sort of Save Journalist campaign, he wanted to make it clear that he's ready to move on, that he doesn't want to get involved with fighting with the ABC endlessly, and he's pretty much not going to be returning to Good Game. I think that's something a lot of people need to take into account when they are starting to do these sort of letter writing campaigns and things like that. If you want to go and complain to the ABC about this decision, I think that's very valid, because I think the ABC needs to know they've made a bad decision. But if you're doing it because you think the Journalist is going to be able to come back, it's not going to happen, because he doesn't want to come back, and who can blame him? Like, the situation was intolerable. It was a really nasty situation that he's sort of left now, because who would want to go back to a place where you get sacked and then they lie about why they sacked you? So I would sort of just put it out there to people that sort of support Journalist in whatever future endeavours that he gets involved in, but don't be shocked if he doesn't ever return to Good Game, because he's pretty much had enough of it. Well, that's all I've got to pretty much say on this subject. If you've got comments, feel free to leave them below or make a video response. Thanks to everyone who's been watching the Good Game videos that I've been putting up over the last week or so. And until next time, see you later.